private session. It was not on an agenda for a private session. It was a matter that was brought up and voted on. It was discussed by our senior staff last week, who determined that it was a procedural error. That I certainly agree with that, and I'm sure council agrees with that, and an apology was issued. Now, just so we don't get ourselves in this mess again, people are asking, so what are you going to do about this? That's a good question. I don't think that any member of this council would hold up their hand and say that they haven't heard the mayor at meetings on many occasions say that we're not supposed to discuss that. And sometimes unintentionally before a council meeting, when our pre-council session, you'll remember me saying this on many occasions, you have to wait until you get out to public session before you ask these questions. The public should be aware of this. That being said, you know what, it's not a perfect system. But one thing that has been acknowledged and determined, that it's everybody's responsibility, not just mine, it's yours, it's the clerks, it's our staff. So in the future, you can be guaranteed that I'll be holding everybody accountable on this one, and I expect on your side you'll hold me accountable. And here's how it works. If something is brought up that doesn't pertain to the act as we know it, and I'm sure all council is aware of it, then you just raise your hand with a point of order. Say, Mr. Mayor, this is not on the agenda, doesn't really include the things that it's supposed to. The ruling will be made and it'll be over with. But it's going to take 13 of us to be vigilant, not just one. That sets the stage for where we are right now. As it turns out, and I was quite surprised to find this out, I sent the message out to council today, but on Friday, I was a little confused about this whole issue and how it's unfolding and how it's... So our city staff back-checked to find out just exactly what had happened. And quite surprised to hear that the letter was sent to the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. It was a copy of the letter. The original one is here at City Hall. I was also told, and quite surprised, that the Canadian Chamber of Commerce did this survey across the country, and the letters were sent to them. They didn't seem to see that there was really anything that would let the chamber know that everybody was together on one side of this. So that they decided that the letters wouldn't be sent. So last I heard of it, I didn't know if it was sent or not sent. I was surprised that it wasn't. So anyway, we're dealing with a letter that was sent to the Prime Minister supporting something that never went to the Prime Minister. It makes the whole issue just that more strange. It is where it is. We are where we are. We acknowledge it was a procedural error. There was an apology. It's not going to happen again. And if it doesn't, then somebody has to be held accountable. That's the warning. And everybody gets a fair warning on this one. Now, I would entertain council that what's your next move on this? We haven't had a meeting on it to decide what we were going to do. Here we are, and I'll take some suggestions from the chair. One of them, go ahead, Randy.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'm glad to hear the public acknowledgement. I don't believe, however, that we actually apologized. The statement that was released from the city just confirmed that yes, there was a mistake in the process, and everybody makes mistakes, but I thought that our willingness to correct the mistake should have been acted on sooner. We should have given a clear apology, not just a statement that a mistake was made, and we should also have stated at that time that procedures were being put in place to prevent it from happening again. I'm happy to hear that procedures are being put in place to prevent that from happening again. But I also would like to go on record as I did send a motion for the agenda for tonight's meeting, and somehow that motion that I circulated to the clerk and the deputy clerk disappeared between Wednesday last week when I sent it and today, and then I'm told that according to the procedural rules, which we're now following, the motion was not correct because it didn't follow the idea that the letter would be rescinded. So I think, first of all, even though the letter didn't actually get sent, we should publicly state it was rescinded. Number two, we should apologize officially and publicly to the citizens of Fredericton that the error in procedure took place. And as you've already confirmed, we should confirm for the public to restore credibility to the council, especially for the new council coming in, that this won't happen again because procedures are in place. And lastly, I want to be forthright. I was very disappointed last week when the message was not to do those steps, but instead to delay discussing this event until after the election. So people didn't want it to be an election issue. Well, now, folks, it is an election issue in a way because we didn't do the right thing when we found out a mistake was made. I'm sorry about that. I personally apologize to the public that took place, and I'm hoping that tonight we'll do the same and not just issue a statement that there was an error in procedure, but say to the public, we are actually sorry that took place, and not assume that we're sorry, and also confirm that the procedures are in place so it won't happen again. And also, I think to be fair as well, I personally would like to publicly thank the Council of Canadians who brought the message forward and discovered the error process so that we could do something to fix it. I'm just disappointed it took us this long to fix it. So thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Erickson.
I take responsibility as well because I was at the meeting where the vote took place. Although I didn't support it, I should have followed up because I assumed that it was a matter of closed committee that we're not allowed to talk about those. So now that we know that the motion was passed incorrectly, I feel less restrained to indicate that we should have fixed it sooner. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, well, that's the message that I tried to convey to council. There's enough responsibility for all to go around, and that would have been a good point, Randy, had you been a little more perceptive on that and called us on it. That's really what should have happened and saved this whole incident. But nevertheless,
I did vote against it, and I did say it was wrong at the time. If you pushed it forward, you also last Monday refused to allow it to go on the agenda last Monday night because we needed unanimous consent of council.
and then it just
So don't hide behind the public process now. When you did the wrong thing then, we need to fix this publicly and move on.
calm down. There's no need to holler. You have a microphone. It's a council chamber. You're a councillor.
Yeah, you're the mayor, you're supposed to be. You're the one that provides.
Listen,
leadership.
Randy,
Provides the leadership.
Randy, we can all take responsibility in this one. You know. Councillor Erickson, I'm sorry for the interruption. Councillor Dickinson, give somebody a chance here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have many concerns when I start looking backwards at how we have arrived at the place we are tonight. As much as it's sometimes desirable to run meetings in a very kind of collegial and convivial way, we have a procedural bylaw that asks us to follow the rules. The rules are set out to increase our transparency to the public, among other things, to allow us to access our municipal government in a fair and even-handed way. And I think before we jump straight to apologizing to the public, I think we should be very clear about what we're apologizing about. Now, I'm not a lawyer, nor am I an expert in procedural practices. I wouldn't stand next to the city clerk and pretend that I could do her job for 5 seconds. However, I do have some questions that I think I would like answered. Because I believe, and from what I've heard and read in the media, that one of the great concerns is that we discussed in a private session of CIC a matter that was not fitting to be discussed. And I don't believe actually that is correct, because I believe when you as chair brought up the issue that you wanted to talk about, that it was your concern that the letter from the the Canadian Chamber of Commerce was going to be destructive to the relationship you had with the mayors of Quebec.
Correct.
I believe that that's one of the grounds covered through the Privacy Commission, that you're actually allowed to talk about that before you bring it to the public, before you craft a letter that then gets debated openly in the public. So I had no problem with that being added to the agenda, even though it wasn't added to the agenda in a formally appropriate way. We probably would have voted unanimously to do it. We probably would have added it to the agenda in an appropriate way if we had been given the chance, but we just kind of pushed right on through that point. My concern, however, after we amended the letter, after we voted on it, and the debate wasn't long and we didn't have a lot of time to think about it, but my great concern was that it did not come back after CIC to a regular council meeting or a special council meeting, as it says in our procedural bylaw that all matters must. And that is the point in time where it would have been made clear that the public could come in and have their say on the issue and watch us debate the issue. So I just want to be very clear that procedural irregularities happen, in my opinion, and that the letter should be ruled out of order and rescinded. But it should be ruled out of order and rescinded because it failed to be ratified through council consideration at a regular council meeting after it was discussed, I think appropriately, in a closed CIC session. And I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect.
Very good. Motion on the floor that it be rescinded. Is that what your motion is? Seconded by Councillor McDermott, that the letter that was sent to the Prime Minister through the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, that letter and the content be rescinded. That's the motion. On the question, Councillor Keenan.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I'd like to understand what our next step is if we rescind this letter, because that will go a long ways to determining how I will vote on this. And I'll just give my perspective. I'm going to go back and start about why this is important to me and why I voted the way I did that night. I think we've accepted that it should have been done in an open session. Wouldn't have changed my vote one bit. And I hope it wouldn't change other people's votes as to how they voted regarding this letter on that evening. So I've got two daughters. And last September, I put one on an airplane to Calgary. This past week, I loaded a truck to send another one to Halifax. The reason that that's happened is because we have no opportunity in this province. Our opportunities are limited, and we need to get our kids home. We need to provide opportunities for our children, for others to earn a living, and that's why it's important to me that we address this issue. It's not good enough for me just to let this go and say, oh, we made a mistake in there. The issue is still with us. And I, for one, want to stand and say, I am definitely for the pipeline following the NEB and the legislative process that it has to undergo. I think the reason that this came up by the Council of Canadians didn't have so much to do with the fact that it was done in a private session. It's that they don't like the result. And I think that the last paragraph of this letter is pretty clear. It says, Mr. Trudeau, we're not calling on you to give energy special treatment.
Could you read that slowly? You're going too fast. And I think that's an important letter part right there.
We're not calling on you to give energy special treatment. The project must undergo rigorous scrutiny and consultation through the NEB process to determine and plan for potential risks and impacts. We've acknowledged in the letter that we're not asking anybody to pass anything that doesn't meet the regulatory process. However, once that process has been completed and the file has been sent for cabinet for your review, we simply ask that you make that decision based on evidence and the national interest. And I would add to that the interest of our province and the economy in our province. So I want to make those comments. I don't know if there will be an amendment offered that we talk about the letter, but I certainly am not, I'm not willing to just rescind the letter and say, no, we don't support that, because I do support the letter. Thank you.
And there will be another opportunity for another motion to deal with that if that's what you choose to do. Councillor Brandy.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I'm just curious about